Hi everyone, I'm Jasprit Singh. I'm Microsoft Identity and Security Engineer. Today I want to talk about Microsoft Entra ID sign-in logs in detail. If you have ever looked at sign-in logs and thought everything looks normal, this video is for you. In this video, I'll also try to do some practical sessions in order to create some evidences with sign-in logs. I'll also try to explain how Entra ID authentication actually works and why sign-in logs can miss important context even when they're technically correct. So let's begin. So this is one of the common assumptions in IT industry is, and most of the identity and access management engineers have is, if access happens, there must be a sign-in, and that's what happens with everybody. In all admins think that if somebody access the application, there will be a sign-in log. That's not completely true. These used to work in previous identities, but not in modern authentication methods. These do not work. So sometimes there are applications where non-interactive user sessions will be there, sign-in events, no user sign-in and no user interactive session will be there, and there will be no sign-in logs for that as no user sign-in logs, and you will see. So it works. One session is once you are into the M365 portal, no MFA, no password required, and everything will be done by app. One session can be used to log into other application. If there is no sign-in event, nothing happened. That's not completely true. So if somebody has not logged into, because I can show you there are hundreds of non-interactive user sessions are available, and most of the engineers miss to check those alerts, those sign-in logs. Yeah, these assumptions made sense years ago because I remember that when we talk about on-prem ID, these we were talking like Active Directory and other directory platforms. We used to think about like this: if somebody try to access, there will be an audit alert. Auditing is enabled, everybody will be noted. But in these modern identities like Entra ID, these do not are totally 100% correct. A hacker has got access to your token. Once token is, and this token, no password is required, no MFA required, no new sign-in will be generated because it's already existing session. So you can use that session to log in to other applications as well. Let's say Teams, Outlook, send an email without even your user interaction, without user sign-in logs. If I talk about non-interactive ones, the non-interactive ones are the background services are like client secrets and certificates. Services do not require a user interactive session. Legacy authentication protocols do not behave like modern authentication work, which means so these authentication protocols like POP, IMAP, Exchange, ActiveSync, modern authentication. This means partial logging. This, as a result, they don't know how to fully work with modern authentications. They end up the result is partial logging, inconsistent sign-in details. That's why legacy authentication is so dangerous. That's why we must disable legacy authentication. So one thing we must understand that once a token is issued, user tries to log in, token is issued, the user can log in to all apps like Teams, like Outlook, SharePoint with the same session. Conditional access is evaluated at the time of sign in only. Once sign in is done, this is the login event. Once sign in is done, it does not evaluate what's going on. So sometimes what happens is use access token is issued so he can access other applications and no new sign-in logs. User based sign-in logs because user is not logged in. So let's talk about authentication versus session. Key concept. So one thing we must understand: Entra ID is token based, not session based. Sign-in logs primary focus is to record token issuance. So when was the token issued? It does not record continuous access. For how long you have been accessing this application, sign-in logs cannot tell you. So what happens once a user successfully authenticates, tokens are issued, session persists, access can continue without new interactive sign-in. Let's say this user tries to log into this M365 portal, office.com. And once username and password is Entra ID, this Entra ID will, this is his computer. Username and password goes here. ID, my Microsoft Entra ID has issued a token. A token is issued. When tokens are issued, session uh, can persist, and this person can log into Outlook, apps, Teams with the same session, SharePoint. We won't need to. No MFA will be prompted. When this person tries to log into these applications, no MFA, no password required, no conditional access evaluated. What sign-in logs can tell you? Sign-in logs can tell you, let's say this user tries to log in to Outlook at 8:59 a.m. and MFA was satisfied and password was compromised. CA policy was evaluated. But after this, for how long the session persisted, persisted, sign-in logs cannot tell you whether it lasted for 3 hours, 2 hours. No, not possible. So why location changes don't always appear? So I would also like to do this as a practical, where I would show you some evidence, try to show you some evidences with by trying to log in from different content, trying to change the IP address of my computer using a VPN connection, and you will see that no alerts will be triggered, and alerts sign-in logs will show that, but no robust authentication. We can still log in. No MFA prompt will be there. No password required. Let me try to explain you with the first direct example. Let's say I'm sitting here, Canada. This is my laptop. Okay. Now this is India. I'm logged in here at 8:59 a.m. Okay. After and username and password is stated, MFA, username, password, MFA, everything is satisfied. I'm logged in. I'm trying working on it. Let's say after 10 minutes, I connected VPN and I can log in. My IP address has changed, location has changed. So it shows now Indian IP address. And now at, let's say, 9:10 a.m. So no obvious alerts, risky alerts showing. No MFA will be prompted. No password reauthentication. The reason being why it happens, that's because a valid token exists. MFA was previously satisfied, conditions have not changed. MFA is a login event. When somebody tries to log in, MFA will be triggered. However, when somebody is already logged in, a token already exists, that's why hackers are after this token. Once MFA is satisfied, passwords are authenticated, token is issued, you won't be prompted in MFA. So let's try to do practical of this. So let's first validate what is my IP address. So I can show you. You can see as I am in Regina, Saskatchewan. That's my IP address. So now let's try to validate by going to office.com. Okay. Let me try to log in with my test account to generate some alerts. Uh, EID. So I'm logged in, as you can see. That's my standard user. Now let's try to validate the logs in the Exchange Online or in Entra ID. So let's validate the logs. As you can see, it shows that my log IDs are generated. Jana Saskatchewan, that's my location-based log. Okay, EID user one. And if I click on that, it shows that it can confirm that's the user ID. Location is this one. That was the IP address. First factor. Even though security defaults are enabled, it did not ask for an MFA. However, let's try to just change the IP address by I'm going to connect the VPN, and will also show you the IP address. So I'm connected with the VPN now. Let's see what the IP address I'm going to get in. That's my IP address. That's the IP address, and the location has changed. As you can see, it shows Punjab, Mohali, Indian location. I'm going to refresh the session with this same standard user, AID user 01. I'm going to refresh it now. As you can see, I have refreshed my session. No MFA prompted. So let's validate the logs in 365 portal. So let's quickly validate. This one it shows. Um, this one shows the IP address Chandigarh, same user. As you can see, um, location, device info, authentication. So if you talk about authentication details, previously satisfied, so I did not ask for an MFA. First factor authentication. Even it did not prompt for an MFA. Conditional access security default. So no MFA, no re-authentication, nothing. Yeah, previously satisfied, and you can log in. So no alerts as well. Nothing. No risky sign-ins. So this is one of the security flaws that happens with security defaults. However, when we configure conditional access policies, we can overcome this situation by implementing risky based identity protection policies and sign-in risk policies to protect identities from being stolen or from being compromised. So let's talk about what is MFA satisfied. Let's talk about MFA satisfied. It is one of the most misunderstood term that I have seen. And people understand that this means once MFA is satisfied, account is 100% protected, identity is 100% protected. But that's not completely true. MFA is a login event, which means you enter username, you try to log into an application, you enter username, password is shared, MFA will be triggered. However, this user is already entered and he tries to access this other application, MFA will not be triggered. A token will be used to log into this one. So that at least once during the authentication flow. So once MFA is satisfied, you will not be prompted for an MFA. So after that, tokens can be reused. As I said, session persist. You already select, let's say, session. You already created a session to log into M365 portal. That token will be used for login to Outlook, Teams, SharePoint. So session persist. No additional MFA. So once you log into this, you don't need to satisfy the MFA again. Yeah. Distinction is subtle but extremely important. Yeah, we need to understand. So MFA will not be triggered every time, and you will not be able to see these triggers in sign-in logs as well. Silent token refresh. So this is what you must also understand: the refresh token access tokens in the background. Let's say you logged into M365 portal, and after 5 minutes, you refresh the page. Once you refresh, the token will be refreshed in the backend. So again, no MFA. So let's say I'm taking an example. Let's say 2 hours token, right? A session limit is 2 hours. Since you already refreshed the portal, token will be refreshed and your session will be refreshed as well. Reuse sessions. Again, said same session will be reused. Same token will be used for login to other applications and refresh. Let's say 2 hours, now he refreshed, so again 2 hours timer will start. Yeah. Avoid interrupting the user. As it's self-explanatory, right? So one, login, and you will not be prompted for MFA again and again. These offlows often generate non-interactive sign-ins because since you did not enter the username and password, so these will not be user-based sign-in. You will not be able to see user-based sign-in logs. Non-interactive sign-in logs will be generated. But logs don't always tell the full story. So what happens after MFA satisfies tokens refresh in the backend? You refresh, so you will not, because sometimes you have access to you are trying to log in with legacy based application that does not be that legacy applications do not behave like modern authentication protocols. Therefore, partial logging, inconsistent sign-in logs, we will not have full story what's going on. If you are not able to get full logs, sign-in based logs, that's again a risk. Why this matters? If you only rely on sign-in logs, you may underestimate exposure. For instance, if you're not able to get all logs, it means you are exposing your identity that which you are not able to track. Let's say you're running legacy authentication applications. Let's say IMAP does not know how to work with modern authentication protocols. Therefore, you are getting partial logging, and you are leaving, and you are underestimating that, and you are not worrying about these partial logging. Because hackers might take leverage of this partial logging and can log in to your M365 environment, and sign-in logs will not be able to see the logs, and when investigation happens, you will not be able to retrieve, you will not be able to understand what's going on, what has happened. Session level risk, which I will explain here. Sign-in logs can only tell when the signing happens, but what happens to sessions, that's not sign-in logs can tell. This isn't about panicking. It's about understanding the limits of what logs can tell you, so that we know what's going on and what we have to do and where we need to cover ourselves. Therefore, stricter conditional access policies should be implemented, like MFA enforcing, session limiting session, tying session to a device, these things, right? Risky based conditional access policies, risky user based identity protection policies, sign in policies, to understand, to protect the identities from being stolen. So how to think differently? Because I remember that when something happens, when there is an incident in the company, everybody starts looking at the information, find the sign-in logs and how did it happen. What we should follow, and this is what I always recommend to all IT admins. Rather than following reactive approach, we should be proactive. It means when we start thinking about what happens after authentication, MFA is satisfied, where we can see the logging, what is missing in the logging. Let's say if you're running any legacy application protocols, we should disable it, move the application. We know what are the loopholes that we have, what are the security flaws that we are running, so what are the security risks that we are running, and how we can overcome them. Once we start working on what happens after what happens after authentication, what are the protocols that we rely on, did we enforce MFA to all users? Yeah, these are the questions that we must ask, and whether if session is limited, or whether it's a default. Are we running on security defaults, or whether and did we enforce conditional access policies? Identity protection policies are turned on, or still running disabled, or still disabled. These are the basic questions that we must ask before. So these were once we start doing these proactive approaches, we can actually we can make our tenant, we can protect our tenant, we can prevent the bad guys from doing the bad things to our tenant, and we can prevent our identities from being stolen. Once we shift this mindset from this will improve investigations, reviews, and security conversations that we talk about. Majority of companies differently, they follow reactive approach, where they start looking at investigation logs, because sign-in logs will not we must understand, we will not be able to get non-interactive sign-in logs. We are totally based on session based session tokens are being granted. So sign-in logs only tell you about sign-in events. MFA is satisfied. But what happens after MFA, no one knows. That is what we need to figure out. That is what we need to understand. Once we understand these things, session-based, token-based, how we can tie the token to a device, session left MFA satisfy, conditional access policies. Once we're done, then we can make sure that our entities are protected. Final takeaway. We must understand that clean sign-in logs do not mean that nothing happened. They are silently. So let's say, if I were to give you an example, let's say user is logged into, if you do not see, let's say user is logged in here, user has refreshed his username, non-interactive session. Non-interactive session is refreshed, and the session is refreshed. Token is, yeah, attacker has got the access to the token, and he can do whatever he wants to do it. Since no MFA, since no new sign in, clean logs shows, but attacker is doing his work here. So we must understand that clean logs, when you do not see clean logs, it doesn't mean that nothing is happening. Might be attacker is doing something. He can take the, he can capture the session by using phishing links or some other from malware, info steal malware by installing on computers and try to capture the malware sessions. This just means trust was granted and trust can persist quite quietly. Yeah, one session is done, one session is token is issued, session is created. He can do whatever he wants to do it in that particular session. If you want deeper technical breakdowns, business impact discussions, or hands-on experiments related to this topic, check the links in the description. Thanks for watching, guys. I'll see you in the next video.